Good afternoon again. We're going to continue with the Mark Golding question and answer session with the disabled. So now this is part 2 of it. So please sit back, chillax, and enjoy. So thank you very much for listening, guys. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Ensure that persons with disabilities have a strong voice in national decision making and political participation.
Yes. Well, our party is built on certain principles. And participatory democracy, which is a long word or two long words, is a fundamental principle for us. So that means that we believe that government must be informed by persons being involved in the process of anything that impacts them. So applying that principle to the community of persons with disabilities, we would want to see that community brought into the mainstream as much as possible of how the country is run on a day-to-day basis. So institutions of the government, public boards and so on, we would want to see more persons with disabilities brought onto public boards so that their voice can be heard where decisions are being taken that affect the community of persons with disabilities. You know. We would also like to establish what we could call consultative councils, where persons with disabilities at the national and parish levels are represented to ensure that their voices are heard on issues that affect their lives. So, for example, we envisage encouraging the municipal corporations to establish these kind of consultative councils with the community of persons with disabilities in their jurisdiction, in their parish, for example, or in the KSAMC, so that the issues of persons with disabilities are constantly being brought to the fore, and where the people who have the resources to spend and to allocate and make decisions around that can hear what those issues are. And that means you should have a more responsive government at the grassroots level, moving right up to the top. Yeah.
Very much so.
Yeah.
Okay then, moving on to question number 3, sir. Okay. You indicated that the PMP introduced sign language in Parliament, a historic first. How has that step influenced inclusion and representation, particularly for the deaf community in Jamaica?
Yes, well, it was a historic step to introduce the use of sign language in Parliament, so that parliamentary debates are covered not only through the media broadcasting what is being said and so on, but also broadcasting somebody who is using sign language to convey to the deaf community what is being said. Because prior to that, it was a situation where persons who are deaf couldn't hear what was going on.
They were left out.
Yeah, so they weren't participating, they weren't able to engage, and a lot of these things that are being discussed in Parliament have far-reaching effects, are things that impact the lives of everyone. And so this was a very important and historic move to introduce it, and it is something which has continued to this day. And I want to big up the main person who does this. There she is at the back. Yeah, enough respect. Everybody knows her because she's always helping out with that area. So, we believe that that is an important step forward, and that empowers the deaf community to really know what is going on and have a better opportunity to participate in public life. And it also signals to the society that inclusion is not really optional. Inclusion is something which must be strived for at all times.
All must be included, whether disability or without disability.
That's right.
All are important, right, sir?
That's correct. And I think it's a responsibility of government to be very aware of the gaps, of the areas where there is exclusion of persons from different areas of life, and to find innovative ways to bring them into the society and to participate in the society. So that was, I think, an example of an inclusive approach towards government.
Okay, sir. Understand? Okay, sir. Question number 4 from the disability community. The Disability Act 2014 created legal protection, but enforcement remains challenged. What are the PMP's plans to ensure that these rights are fully upheld in everyday life?
Yes. Well, when the Act was passed in 2014, we had anticipated that there would have been a period of time, 2 to 3 years, where the society would have been educated about the Act and the obligations that it imposes on people and their rights under the Act before the Act was actually brought into effect. But we demitted office in 2016, March, and it ended up taking the government 7 years to bring the Act into effect. So it only came into effect relatively recently. And the Disabilities Rights Tribunal, which I mentioned before, which is a key enforcement mechanism for the rights under the Act, has been constituted, and it is now for it to be given support, and there must be a public consciousness raising process where the government explains to the society what it is expected of each and every one under the Disabilities Act. Because it's when people are aware of their rights and also when people are aware of their obligations under the Act that you will see action. And then the Disabilities Rights Tribunal can play a critical role in I would say, mediating any kind of disputes towards a solution where people bring their complaints before that body. So that is an important part of what we would bring to the table there. You know, we want to strengthen the Jamaica Council for Persons with Disabilities to provide it with resources so that it can carry out its function of investigating complaints. I am aware that that body has tremendous budgetary constraints, and it is affecting how effective they are in doing their work. And you can't have the Disabilities Act having the impact that it should have unless the Jamaica Council for Persons with Disabilities is supported sufficiently so that it can play the catalytic role that it is supposed to play in investigating matters and generally representing the community of persons with disabilities in the government, you know, in all areas of government. So that is an important aspect of it as well. You know, we would also want to look at auditing public spaces, schools and government offices for accessibility, so that we can set out a plan of action to make government facilities, schools and others, as accessible as possible for persons with disabilities. That has to be a very deliberate process. And also working with the private sector, the PSOJ and other bodies that represent business, so that they can have a good understanding of what is expected of them in their business places and in their employment practices to provide accessibility for persons with disabilities. So these are some of the things we want to do. And even, for example, we're looking at development approvals for the building of buildings or projects and government contracting and so on. These are areas where a proactive approach for inclusion of persons with disabilities must be brought into the thinking and into the process so that we ensure that what is built is accessible. And government contractors, you know, take into account persons with disabilities when they're tendering for government contracts, for procurement contracts, so that they can, for example, we could look at giving in the point system when you're weighing up different tenders, to the extent that they are employing persons with disabilities, they could be given extra points for that sort of thing. Yeah, so we can
Extra
see.
points.
Yeah. Want to encourage them to, you know, bring people into the workshop, into the workplace. Yeah.
Okay then. Question number 5, sir. With the rising cost of healthcare, how will the PMP expand support for persons living with disabling conditions through the National Health Fund?
Yeah. Well, the National Health Fund was established by the People's National Party. It's one of the institutions that we are proud of. And it has had a tremendous impact on the delivery of healthcare in Jamaica, including during the pandemic, in the COVID era, when the resources of the National Health Fund were very, very important in bringing oxygen and vaccinations for those who wanted to be vaccinated and so on to the people. So we would like to empower the National Health Fund some more to ensure that the assistive devices and critical medications are available with subsidy and support from the National Health Fund to those persons who need it. And so that is one area that we are looking at. And of course, as I'd mentioned, the National Disabilities Fund, which we want to establish with $1 billion, which we would intend to add to every year. We see that as also playing a role in ensuring that persons who have disabilities and need access to health care get support where there are situations in which they need that kind of help. So these are some of the things that we're looking at doing. Yeah. And, we also would like to establish mobile clinics where, we can go out into the communities to where people are. Yeah. In partnership with the National Health Fund, so that persons living in rural areas or in other areas where they don't have immediate access to health facilities can get health care and can get treatment, get diagnosis, and so on. So these are some of the things that we're looking at to make healthcare more available to persons with disabilities.
Very well said, sir. Very well said. Okay. All right. Sir, housing accessibility is a critical. Or will the PMP ensure that 5% NHD allocation for accessible housing is not only maintained but expand in the future?
Well, the first thing we have to do is actually build some affordable housing that the people can afford to buy. Because what has been happening in recent years is that most of the houses that are being built in the country are really for people who already have resources and are already fairly well off. But for the ordinary Jamaican people, and especially persons from the community, with disabilities where there are high levels of unemployment and so on, those houses that are being built now are out of reach for them. So we have a plan, and Senator Floyd Morris is here. I hope he will have a chance to expound some more on that plan. To build 50,000 affordable houses over a 5-year period. And, in the design of those houses and in the allocation of those houses, the community of persons with disabilities has to be very much in mind so that we don't make the mistakes of excluding them from their ability to participate in those houses. We also would like to see new NHT developments and other housing developments that are funded by the government, really take on board design features that make them more accessible for persons with disabilities. And including things like wider walkways, doorways, ramps, and adaptable bathrooms and so on, so that persons with physical disabilities and other disabilities, find an environment conducive to living. And these are some of the things that I would say are going to drive our housing policy. Essentially, we want to make housing affordable for the people, and we want persons with disabilities to have the best possible chance of participating in that rapid expansion of affordable housing right across Jamaica. Our plan is to do build at least 500 affordable houses in every constituency in the country.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. All right. Technology and e-learning are vital for inclusion. What are the PMP's plans to further mitigate digital accessibility for students with disability?
Yes. Well, we want to first of all remove all taxes from devices that are abused part of learning. So when you're talking about laptops and tablets and so on, you know, we want to remove the taxes from those. And we would also want to include in that adaptive technologies such as braille readers, speech-to-text software, and specialist input devices, keyboards for students who need them. And this is an area where the Disability Fund can play a role in providing support for the cost of those items. So these are some of the things that we are looking at in the area of education, because we realize that technology has a particularly critical role to play in delivering education for persons with disabilities. You know, because of the nature of their lives, technology can help to bridge some of the gaps of accessibility that they would otherwise not be able to bridge. So that's one of the things that we would want to focus on, using the resources that that fund will have. We also see a need to train our educators nationally in the effective use of digital tools that support students with disabilities. So, you know, we need to ensure that our teachers understand the technology that is there to help persons with disabilities as well. And, you know, we were also talking about supporting education institutions that, in terms of things like sign language interpretation, captioning, screen reader compatibility, and other assistive technologies, so students with various types of disabilities can learn without barriers. So we want to ensure that our education institutions are delivering learning so that persons understand those things.
Well, so then, would sign language be taught in the school then?
I think we need to get there, you know. I think we need to get there. I have a little granddaughter. She's only 2.5. And she is learning sign language already because she gets to watch TV where they use it in the children's programming. And so she's there using the sign language in a very natural way and so on. So I think it's something that we need to consider introducing to children at a very early age. I think they can even learn to use sign language before they learn to talk. Yeah, so there's a plenty of scope for that. Yeah.
Very good.
Yeah.
Very, very good. All right. Access to employment remains a key barrier in a study complete by Professor Dr. Floyd Morris in 2025. It was noted that 91% of those interviewed stated that they were unemployed. How will the PMP strengthen the policy reserving 5% of the public sector jobs for a qualified person with disability?
Yeah. Well, it's one thing to have that requirement on paper, but it's another thing to actually make it happen. And, you know, if you don't monitor and if you don't measure, it doesn't get done. So it's important that we actually audit right across the public sector to see to what extent the different ministries, departments, and agencies are actually employing persons with disabilities and how they stack up against that target of 5%. And to the extent that they are achieving it, they should be rewarded for that. And to the extent that they fall short, they should be encouraged, strongly encouraged, to look at ways that they can get close to that target. So that is part of what we need to do with having disabilities rights very much in mind. In the employment era, the public sector must lead the way and set and are actually employing persons with disabilities and how they stack up against that target of 5%. And to the extent that they are achieving it, they should be rewarded for that. And to the extent that they fall short, they should be encouraged, strongly encouraged, to look at ways that they can get close to that target. So that is part of what we need to do with having disabilities rights very much in mind. In the employment era, the public sector must lead the way and set an example so that we can ensure that as many people as possible from the community of persons with disabilities get the opportunities to work in the public sector. We're also looking at working with the Abilities Foundation and with HEART, NSTA, to expand training and job readiness programs to ensure that qualified candidates are prepared for meaningful public sector roles. So there may be some need for training of persons to get them ready to enter those roles, those employment opportunities in the public sector. And we need to ensure that the agencies that exist are encouraged and supported in delivering that training. And lastly, I would say we have to work with the private sector. The PSOJ, the Jamaica Chamber of Commerce, the Jamaica Manufacturers and Exporters Association, the Small Business Association, to make sure that they encourage their members to get on board with creating great accessibility to, for persons with disabilities in the world of employment, and to take advantage of whatever training and other opportunities, accessibility issues and so on, that the government, through the various government agencies and the support of the funding of the Disabilities Fund, is able to provide to enable persons to come into the workplace, whether it be in the private sector or the public sector. So it really is about having a consciousness of the issues of persons with disabilities and ensuring that in every area we are mindful of their needs and the community's needs and the community's abilities and what needs to be done so their abilities can be encouraged and can flourish and can find expression in tangible ways through the world of work.
Okay. Sounds good. Sounds very good. Okay, sir. Mr. Mark Golden, sir. All right. Thousands of people in Jamaica with disability who rely on assistive devices just to live with dignity and independence, yet many can't afford them. What will the PNP do to ensure these essential tools are no longer out of reach?
Well, we know that there are real challenges for many people in this area. You know, thousands of our brothers and sisters across Jamaica living with disabilities. Some of them need a wheelchair, some need a hearing aid, some need a prosthetic limb or the repairing of a limb, and so on. And getting access to that might be the difference between opportunity and isolation, or the ability to go to work or not. So this is very, very important. We don't regard these assistive devices as luxuries. No, we see them as lifelines. These are basic, critical things that the government must find ways of delivering to the people.
These devices make us independent.
Yeah, they make you independent. They make you independent. They make you productive, and therefore they help the economy because they make the people more productive, and it's the people that generate economic activity. So it's part of building an economy is ensuring that the people who need those devices have access to them. And this is one of the main reasons why we think it's necessary to have a dedicated fund to support the community of persons with disabilities, because otherwise, in the budgeting process, they're not going to get what they need. And so having a dedicated fund with their needs in mind is a very important decision that we have made to help drive this process forward. And, you know, we are also looking at possibly expanding the National Health Fund coverage to include some of the key assistive devices and reduce the burden, the financial burden on families. So the NHF, they have a range of things that they cover and fund, and we want to look at what assistive devices can be included in that range of things that they cover. And, you know, generally speaking, you know, again, I mentioned the mobile clinics. And, you know, we want to see how we can roll out those online clinics so that we can do on-site fittings, repairs, and training so that people can use and maintain their devices with confidence, so that, you know, somebody who has a need for a repair of a limb, for example, can get in touch with the Jamaica Council for Persons with Disabilities, who could then relay that to the mobile clinic that could come out to where that person lives and see if they can deal with the matter there.
Yes, to do the assessments and the repairs, even so.
Even so, yeah. You know.
Okay. All right. Sir, it is a matter of the Ministry of Education that every child can learn. And every child must learn. However, a study done by Professor Floyd Morris in 2011 revealed that while 46% of these interviews supported inclusive education, 96% indicated that they cannot provide adequate support to students with disabilities. While this study was some time ago,
So please stay tuned for part 3 in a couple hours. So just sit back, relax, as I said, and just listen up. Thank you.